What's happening, y'all? This is Mike D with Black Fathers Now, where we're bringing the village to the brothers. Every couple of weeks, you can look forward to a quick inspirational message or a thought-provoking guest with knowledge and wisdom, all geared towards helping you be the best father that you can be. We're bringing the village to you. Now it's your turn to do something with what you learned. All right, y'all. Let's go. What's going on, fellas? This is Mike D with Black Fathers Now. And yo, we got a guest on today that has a story for you. And it's a unique story, right? It's not just a typical story of an athlete or whatever. It's a cat that's gone through all kind of different transitions, and he's multi-layered. And it's none other than my man Jayson Swain. Now, Jayson's a married father of 3 girls. Yeah, we're gonna keep him prayed up. Yeah, 3 girls. You must have been a bad man back in the day, brother. Okay. Back in the day. But he was a high school All-American football player out of the state of Alabama, and then he went on to have a dynamic career as a wide receiver for the University of Tennessee. He signed a free agent deal with the Chicago Bears, but that, in essence, was just a setup for what was to come. We're gonna really dive into this brother's journey. Fellas, with the Black Fathers Now family, let's welcome my man Jayson Swain. What's going on, brother?
Everything. Thanks for having me today. I look forward to the conversation and really diving in and folks understanding what's really important. That's being a father.
That's what it's all about, my man. And before we get started, man, I always let the brothers that come on give some shout outs, man. You better shout out that wife and that family, man. But give a shout out to all those folks that you'd like to recognize here, my man.
Well, first, I mean, nothing is possible without God. So shout out to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and my wife, my kids, my great uncle who raised me, my supporters, and also the haters. I mean, your supporters drive you, and your haters also drive you too to be who you want to be. So shout out to everyone, to be honest.
I dig that, man. Dig that. And so you mentioned haters, you mentioned supporters, and but then you also talked a little bit about your great uncle that raised you as well. And so we're going to jump into the haters and supporters based on what you're currently doing now in the world of sports radio and impacting the world there. But take this thing back, man. Like let's go back to the origin story of Jayson Swain, man. Where did this thing all begin for you, brother?
It began Illinois. That's where I was born, a little bit outside Chicago. And at the time, it was just me and my mother. My mother got pregnant again when I was probably at 1 and some change. And my brother was born in 1986. Well, when I was raised by my mother, my great uncle at the time lived in Huntsville, Alabama. And my great uncle is the uncle of her, which is my granddad's brother. And she obviously needed some help. She's getting ready to have 2 young boys under the age of 2. And my uncle had agreed just to watch me and kind of help her just get settled with having another baby. And so I had stayed with my great uncle for a little bit early in my life. And my great uncle had a mother who had just passed away, and he had her house, which is in the same city in Huntsville, Alabama. And so to help my mother stayed in that house, and somewhere along the line, my mother decided to go back to Chicago, and that was a move that changed my life forever, because I stayed with my uncle while my mother was getting used to raising another little boy. And I've been in Huntsville ever since, until I got to Tennessee as an 18-year-old young man. But that's why I was raised in Huntsville, Alabama. I was raised by my great uncle, who is retired Air Force, who was a truck driver, and who has 2 sons of his own. He just turned 90 last year.
Wow.
He's in excellent shape. Went to the doctor not too long ago, and they said he had the health of like a 50 or 60-year-old.
Wow,
so,
he's 90.
Oh, he's 90. He still works.
Wow.
And we can't get him to stop, but he's healthy. He was always gone because he was a truck driver. Remember, he retired from the Air Force. He was a truck driver, so he was always gone. And his wife really raised his kids. But when he saw opportunity to help out a family member and take me in, it was really the first time he raised anyone, his own kids.
Wow.
So he took me in. Didn't he raise his own kids, but he raised me. And, there was a lot of transition. There was a lot of bumps in the road, but I wouldn't be the man that I am today. I probably wouldn't be alive or a free man if it wasn't for my uncle. So that's kind of how I got started in Huntsville, Alabama.
Man, it's interesting. Like, have you mentioned that because he was a truck driver, he really wasn't hands-on, I guess, with his own two sons.
Mm-mm.
But you also mentioned that he just turned 90, right?
Yeah.
So he was later in age when you came along. So he was probably pushing 60 or so at the moment. Have you ever talked to him about what inspired him to want to truly be involved in your life in itself? Like, was it something which he felt like he missed out with his sons and he wanted to kind of make up for that? Or was there something else? I don't know. Have you ever had that conversation with him?
Yes, and knowing him now, that's just who he is.
Mm-hmm.
If someone needs help, if there's a neighbor that needs help,
Mm-hmm.
like he always will help that person.
Wow.
Even now, he leads, and he's been doing this for probably 20 plus years, but he leads ministry at the prison there in Huntsville, Alabama. It's called Limestone Correctional Facility. It's a pretty big deal prison there.
Wow.
Maximum security, and he goes in and he leads worship service and he carries out baptisms
At 90 years old.
Yeah, so he's
Wow.
passionate about that. He has a heart of gold. He treats everyone the same with love, and yes, he gets taken advantage of sometime, and sometimes people come in and takes advantage of his kindness and thinks that it is a weakness, and he's learned from that. But the people that he's impacted positively, the number is way more than the people that took his kindness for weakness, and took advantage of the situation. But that's just who he is. And he had someone real close to home that needed some help, and that was his niece, my mother. And it worked out. And there were some times where it was hard because his wife was in the same house. She's no longer with us now. She passed away a few years ago to a heart condition. But she raised their sons, and here he is bringing in someone that he didn't even that's not his, and she's also having to raise me too along with him.
Wow.
It was mostly him, but it was some weird dynamics.
Definitely.
For sure growing up, and I didn't really have that mother around, that motherly love that boys need.
That's right.
You need you need your dad, but you also need your mother too.
Absolutely.
I was just raised by a man, so there were some things that I got by being raised by a man. There's some things that I did not get and receive and needed because I was not raised by really my mother or a female that gave me that love and care that most kids get when they have a mom and a dad in the household.
It's interesting. We mentioned a lot of people say God has a sense of humor, right? Because you mentioned that you were raised by a man. You lacked some of that dynamic of having that motherly influence, in your life. But now you're the father of 3 girls.
It's funny, right?
Man, they say God got a sense of humor, don't he?
Yeah, man. Yeah. The first time I got the news that we were having a girl, I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm looking forward to it as long as the baby is healthy. The second time, I was like, all right, here's the time for the boy. Let's get this boy, shut things down. That was a girl. The third time, I was like, come on, this got to be a boy right here. And then it was another girl. And I just laughed because it's really what I needed.
That's right. Wow.
I didn't grow up in a household where we really cried that much and showed our emotion. Now, my uncle told me he loved me. There's never a shortage of that at all, but I didn't cry.
You raised as a man. I mean, it's a generational thing, right? He's 90, so he was born back in the day. It's like, man, you're a man's man. You don't cry unless like your mama dies, and then after that, you wipe your tears and you got to go lift everybody else up. But you don't. That's what we're taught.
Yeah, he was born April 1926.
Wow.
No, 28. Sorry.
Wow.
28.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so being raised by a man, but then you also emphasize the need for that woman influence. And so it's interesting. This podcast is called Black Fathers Now.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, a lot of it really stems from wanting to help average brothers become excellent in the realm of fatherhood, and to also help to dispel the myth that we're not present,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then there are situations in which there's not necessarily that mother figure. And so that is an important dynamic that needs to be addressed, or needs to kind of be put out there as well, because yes, boys need men. We always hear that notion of, you know, boys need to be raised by men, and boys need men in their lives, which is important, but boys need mothers and women as well, just like little girls need a mother to show her how to become a woman and grow into that. But little girls need a father figure to show her what a man is supposed to be, what that should aspire to, and how to have non-sexual relationships or platonic relationships with someone of the opposite sex. That's needed on both sides. So it's interesting, man. It's a fascinating dynamic.
No, and I don't want to make it seem like my mom didn't want me.
Oh, absolutely,
You know,
absolutely.
My mom was a young single mother trying to raise two
That's
young
right.
boys, and my uncle came in to kind of help.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was, when it was time for me to reunite with my mother, I didn't want to go.
Wow.
I did not want to go. I wanted to stay with my great uncle. And every time there was an attempt for me to go move to Chicago, it would last for a couple days, and then I would cry for my uncle to come back and pick me up. Second grade was probably the only time it really lasted any time. I went for half a school year, and it did not work at all. I think it was it was fourth grade. It did not last at all. I had someone try to bully me. I beat him up, and my mom was like, "Yeah, maybe this ain't the place for you." And I tried again in sixth grade because I was really, really good at basketball, and I felt like Chicago was a place for basketball.
That's
players,
right.
You know?
That's right.
And I had a goal to go to the same high school as Isaiah Thomas. It was a private school, which was really, really awesome in basketball. But I could not be around the violence. I saw drive-bys. I've seen people being shot at. I've seen dead bodies. I've seen my mother be rushed to the hospital because of domestic violence. I've seen someone almost kill my mother. Like, I've seen all those things, and Chicago just wasn't the place that I wanted to be. And so I've always felt at home in Huntsville. And Huntsville really reminds me of Knoxville. It's not too big, it's not too small. But I just never really liked the big cities. But I didn't want to make it seem like my mom didn't want me or
That's
anything.
right.
I just
circumstances.
I was just attached to the hip of my great uncle, man. We just bonded so well.
Now, what about, like, you know, so your great uncle was the major father influence in your life. Did you have like a relationship as well, like with your father?
Yeah, so my father and my mother, they met in the Air Force. Okay. They never got married, and the plan was for them to get together, I guess. I do have my dad's last name.
Okay.
Sometimes you see where a man and a woman, they have a child, and the dad's not there, and the woman will name the child after her. Like, she will give the child her last name. In this case, I did get my dad's last name, and they were supposed to get back together. It didn't happen. But my dad is from South Alabama, and they met in the Air Force, but then I think he moved to the D.C., Maryland area.
Okay.
And I was with my great uncle, and he did a really good job of trying to, like, his goal was to eventually be able to, like, have me permanently. But he had his own issues.
That's
you know?
right.
He has his own issues that he was kind of working through after his time serving the country. And so he just wasn't ready. He didn't have an environment that was probably conducive for me or him. He got married, and my stepmother now lives in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The plan when they got married was to bring me along, but then she got pregnant with my brother.
Oh, wow.
So I have a brother who is I want to say he's like 24, 25, and when he was born, it kind of threw some things back a little bit. But then he got murdered right after my young brother was born. So
Your father did?
my father got murdered when I was 9 years old, and so we're 9 years apart. So he's 25.
Okay.
So my father got murdered when I was 9, and he got murdered in D.C.
Wow.
And so that was difficult for a 9-year-old, and
you had a relationship with him, like you knew who he.
Yeah, I knew who he was. It wasn't bad. It wasn't like he didn't want me. not too long before that, he brought me to D.C. He worked for the government, so he had access. He can get access to White House visits.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember this like it was yesterday. He brought me up to D.C. and he took me on a tour of the White House, of the monument. It was really cool, and I hung out with him, and that was really my last memory of my father. But he was a vet trying to adjust to civilian life, and it was difficult for him. And when he finally got things settled, and he was trying to clean everything up, he was murdered. Mm-hmm.
Wow. I mean, it's you think about transitions, and you think about influences, and you think about how things land on your heart, and you mentioned the notion of wanting to stay with your great uncle.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like your great uncle also brought a level of consistency.
Yeah, he did. When you talk about consistency, I'm talking about going to church every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Every Sunday, every Wednesday, every Sunday evening. Oh my goodness. But it was what I needed, man.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was playing with my friends. I was around the corner, and my uncle called the house where I was playing. And they were like, your uncle is telling you need to come home.
Mm-hmm.
So I walk home, and he meets me in the garage, and he sits me down, and he tells me that your father's been murdered.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. And then I went back to go play. And it didn't really hit me until later. And then it hit me. And then at that point, man, I turned to a different person. I was like mad at the world. I started to really get in trouble in school. I was mad at the world. It was tough.
After your father was killed, really?
So that time between 9 and 12, 13 was rough. And I had to come to the crossroads. And sports really, 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 really was a lifesaver for me.
That was your outlet.
Yeah, sports and a few good people in my life that saw my talents, didn't take advantage of me, and really cared about me, and knew that my uncle was 70-some years old trying to raise a young man, and that's not easy to do.
That's right.
And so I had a lot of support, and but again, I take it. I look at sports. I look at my great uncle, kind of being a saving grace.
Man, and it's interesting. When you tell me the stories of your great uncle, and then you also mentioned some other folks that kind of came in the mix that recognized the talent, but did not go to take advantage of that, which happens so often in our society or whatever. You see someone who's talented, and the vultures start circling because they see a meal ticket, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes back to that concept. It's an old African proverb of it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
Right. And I know personally, I was a product of that village. My parents were married, but I also grew up in a household in which my father had drug addiction, and so because of that, there was a lot of different stuff that kind of went on, and from a an inconsistency perspective, but I always had these positive male figures all around me, whether it be uncles and grandfathers and church members and people in the community and pastors and all these different folks. It was this whole village principle that helped to raise me and my younger brothers, which obviously we weren't perfect, but but helped to show us alternatives and give us different perspectives on life. And it looks like your great uncle embodied that with his great nephew, but then there were other figures that came into play that really helped to cultivate who you are. And it's that whole concept of it takes a village to raise a child. Nobody can do it by themselves.
No, not at all, man. There was some rough times, but there was also some great times, some great lessons. And like I said, I wouldn't be here. I know that for a fact. I don't know if I would be alive. I probably wouldn't be a free man if it wasn't for my great uncle stepping in and raising me. My brother is lucky. My brother's fortunate, because usually when you live in Chicago, man, your chances are not that great. And my mother lived in Chicago most of my life, lives there now, but my brother lived with her all the way up into his freshman year in high school, when she decided to kind of move to Huntsville and allow us to be around each other more, because we really wasn't around each other growing up, except for the little short time I tried to move to Illinois and live with her. It didn't work out, but I'm just thankful, man. I'm thankful for every moment. it's a blessing,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm happy that I have 3 girls, and because there's a lot of lessons that I learned growing up that helped me become a really, really good father.
That's what's up.
I think it all happened for a reason. Me having 3 girls, because it made me say crying is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Showing emotion is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not only was I raised by a man, but I played football.
That's it. That's it.
Like, you can't show any weakness on the
Done.
football field.
They're gonna take advantage of it.
Even if you get knocked out, you can't show the opponent that it hurts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They see you limping on your left side. And where am I gonna target? That left side.
Exactly. You can't show any sign of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not something my uncle said. Like, hey, you can't show you hurt. You better not show weakness. You better not cry. We don't cry in this household. I just never did it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, seeing my father in the casket, that burning image would never be removed from my mind. I just was conditioned not to really show any emotion. And then having 3 daughters, like, I don't mind showing emotion. Like, it's awesome. And it's just part of us growing as a person. I think it's phenomenal.
It is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's just, we're going to get a little bit more into you as a dad. But, we mentioned the whole notion of the village principle, but then you also, numerous times mentioned how sports came into play. And I, mentioned in the bio that, in high school, you were an All-American wide receiver coming out of Alabama. And, that whole notion there, coming into prominence and everything. Talk to me about the kind of coming into prominence or rising to fame from an athletic perspective and how that impacted you as well during this whole high school time frame. Or basically, at what point did you realize, like, yo, I might be that dude?
So growing up, man, I liked basketball first. Remember, I was going to move to Chicago because of basketball. And I remember my uncle put a basketball goal in the backyard and put a light pole. I ain't talking about like a rinky-dink light pole. I'm
An
talking
actual
about
light pole on the corner of the street?
Yes. We put a light pole in the backyard.
That's Alabama, y'all.
Yeah, so
if y'all ain't from Alabama, that's Alabama
we
101.
put a real light pole in the backyard. One where the light doesn't burn out.
Okay.
It's burned out now, but it doesn't burn out for like 10 years.
Okay.
And so that allowed me to practice on my game whenever I wanted to. And he did not put pavement back there, did not lay any asphalt, but I would play so much that half of my backyard was dirt because I had pounded the grass so much.
Wow.
So basketball was really my outlet with everything was going on. It was basketball. Just going out there, shooting. And so basketball was it for me. I had played AAU for most of my life, and I was 6'1.5", 6'2" in 7th grade. My dad was 6'4.5", 6'5". Most of my uncles are really tall.
So they thought you was gonna be about 6'7", 6'8", whatever, because you 6'2".
Yeah, so
in the 7th grade.
It was 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah.
So basketball was supposed to be it. Well, I didn't stop growing, and I remember I was in.
Hold on, how you just gonna glaze over that? Man, I stopped growing.
I
And
did.
so I like,
Growing.
most people don't finish puberty till they about 20.
Man, I
That
was a
joker
grown
said,
man.
man, he was shaving in the 3rd grade,
I was grown.
dunking when he was 10,
I was grown.
and then that joker stopped.
Yeah, I was a grown man, man.
So that's so basketball, and you mentioned you were thinking about going to Chicago leading into high school. So at 13, you're 6'1", 6'2", going into high school. So you still think you got another 4 or 5 inches to grow.
Yeah.
So this thing could go a different way, but
so I'll back up just a little bit. So 6th grade year, again, I'm 11 at the time. So I failed 6th grade.
Okay.
I went to a middle school that they had some problems.
Okay.
As far as test scores and things that go on in the school, whatever. But I had got suspended three times that year. I still got my report card to this day because I show my kids where I came from. But I had 25 Fs in that year.
Wow.
Suspended 3 times. I didn't care about anything, nothing.
And this is 6th grade.
6th grade.
So that's 11, 12. So this is 2 years after your dad passed.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
So my 6th grade year, we go on a field trip. And I noticed that all the folks on the bus were folks who had gotten in trouble too. It was all the school troublemakers.
Okay.
And I was in 6th grade, so it was the 7th grade troublemakers. It was the 8th grade troublemakers. It was all the troublemakers. And I didn't really know.
Now, was this a field trip, or was this like a not a yellow school bus, but like a white bus with bars in the windows and
No, I'm getting there, buddy.
Okay.
It was like a school bus.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
I didn't really know where we were going. It was more like a scared straight field trip.
Okay.
So we go to the exact prison where my uncle was working.
Wow.
And doing ministry work. My uncle to this day is basically the head maintenance guy of a project.
Okay.
Of a housing authority, and he still does it. He was doing it then. So this was a field trip to the prison. This was a scared straight field trip.
Wow.
So we get to the rock quarry, whatever, where all the inmates are busting rocks, and they on chain gang. So we get to the area. We get off the school bus. Again, I'm in 6th grade, so there's older kids than me, 7th and 8th graders. So we get there, we get off the bus, and they showing us, hey, this is the prisoners. This is where you're going to be if you continue to act up. Out of nowhere, someone called my name as one of the prisoners. At that moment, I had street cred a little bit because the prisoners knew me. Well, the prisoner knew me because my uncle, working at the housing authority, had a program set up with the prison to where 2 or 3 guys could work for him during the day for, nickels, pennies, quarters, not much at all. My uncle used to bring some of those guys to the house for breakfast.
Wow.
Yeah, he would bring prisoners to the house for breakfast, bro. Prisoners. And it wasn't murderers. It was guys that was in there for
drugs.
Drugs like that. But again,
the fact of the matter,
he would bring them to the house. And I was too young to really know what was going on, but that's my uncle's grace right there. And so one of those guys that came to my house yelled my name. And so we go through the field trip. I see all the handmade weapons that are used, the shanks and things like that. We had conversations face to face with people who were serving double life sentences for murder. We had a couple dudes in the group that was too hard, that gave off some type of gang signal to some of the prisoners that we were talking to, and they were threatened. Like, hey, when you get in here, you're going to be my...
Gotcha.
I'll be trading cigarette cartons for you. I'm going to turn you into my missus, stuff like that. And at that moment, I was like, I'm not going to prison.
No. They say, look, I might be 6'1", 6'2", and I might be swole up, but I'm too cute to go up in here. Yeah.
that was the moment I said,
that was it.
I'm not going to prison at all. And so that was my 11th, that was my 6th grade year. I was 11 years old. I failed that year. My uncle said, I don't care what school you go to in the city, but you're not going back to that school. I had a buddy of mine who transferred to the other side of town. And he was my boy, so I was like, okay, I want to go to your school. It was an all-white school on the other side of town. My first day of class, I didn't know that side of town existed.
Wow. I
didn't even know that you can have these many white people in one room. I had no clue because...
Your neighborhood was different.
My neighborhood was totally different.
That's right.
And it opened my eyes to a whole brand new world. I saw where teachers cared about the students a lot more. I saw where... Remember back in the day when you had work and you had to copy the question out of the book and then do the answer?
That's right.
I had to do that at my old school, but at this school, they just give you the book.
Wow.
So resources were a lot better. The curriculum was a lot easier to understand. Teachers cared more about their students because the parents cared more and they had more participation in PTA and stuff like that. So my first 6 weeks at the new school, I was 2 points away from making the AB honor roll.
Wow. Hold on. Going from 25 Fs the year before to 2 points away from making an AB honor roll.
Correct.
In the first semester.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct. And the difference was, it was me a little bit, but
the environment.
It was the environment, man.
Wow.
It was the environment. So, I was good. I was athletic and I was good and stuff like that. And so in PE, the PE teacher, whoa, this dude slapping the backboard, doing layups.
Hold on. But yeah, you gotta.
Like, whoa,
But hold on. You said you went to the white school. You know what they say? White men can't jump.
Yeah.
And then you got this brother coming in dunking. Like, hold up. Where Lou Alcindor came from?
Yeah,
Where-
like I was different in PE.
They're like, hold up.
Like I wasn't dunking until 7th grade, but in 6th grade, I'm getting close. I'm slapping the backboard. I'm jumping over kids. Like I'm different.
I'm about to say that's something they ain't never seen before.
I'm different, and so I'm riding a bus from one side of town to the other, and something happened where the bus driver and I didn't see eye to eye, whatever, and that's probably part of my maturing and development or whatever. But my PE coach lived on the same side of town as me, and would commute 20, 30 minutes to school. So he was like, well, how about I just come and get you and take you to school every day?
Okay.
At the time, I didn't know if he was just being nice because he wanted me to play basketball and football for him once I became in 7th grade. But he became one of the most important men in my life, too.
Wow.
My uncle was a little hesitant because he was like, who was this white dude who's taking an interest in my nephew all of a sudden?
Absolutely.
He must want something.
Absolutely. It's Alabama, bro. And your uncle was 70 years old and he was in Alabama. Come on, man. You know the deal.
Wait, man. He must want something.
He wants something.
And so he used to come by our house and eat breakfast with us all the time. And my uncle got a chance to know him and whatever, but he became part of the family. So I played basketball, played football in 7th grade. 8th grade, I'm playing basketball and playing football. Well, the high school that I'm getting ready to go into is one of the best high schools in the state. In 1999, which was when I was either 7th or 8th grade, that high school won the state championship.
In basketball or football?
In basketball.
Okay.
That high school I was supposed to go to. They won the state championship in basketball. They had a guy on their basketball team who was a McDonald's All-American by the name of Marvin Stone. He could have went straight to the NBA. He was a McDonald's All-American. He decided to sign with Kentucky when Tubby Smith was there. When Tubby Smith would come down and recruit Marvin Stone, he heard about an 8th grader that was really, really, really good. That was me. I was going to play on varsity the next year, even as a freshman. And so my goal was to play basketball. I knew I was going to grow a couple inches. I was already ranked AAU ball as one of the best shooting guards in the country. I wasn't going to play football. Well, a gentleman from Central Nell, Alabama, was the new football coach. The football program at my high school was trash. Okay. So I had no desire to play football. Well, I'm in 8th grade, and he comes in, and they're telling him about an 8th grader that you better recruit. So then the football coach comes to me, talks about playing football. My uncle's like, you ain't playing football. You ain't playing football. It ain't happening. You ain't playing ball. You ain't going to be crippled. You ain't playing football. Okay. And the football coach is like, he doesn't give up. He keeps trying. So he goes and he meets with my uncle. Remember, we 20, 30 minutes away from the school. My uncle's like, listen, thanks for coming. No.
He's not playing football.
He ain't playing football. So I'm like, man, but I want to play football a little bit. I want to at least try to see. So my uncle was like, okay. So my 8th grade year in middle school, there was a period called remediation, which simply means the last 30 minutes of school, you wasn't like in a class like English, math, or whatever. The last 30 minutes was a time where you was able to do homework. And so during the remediation period, my middle school coach took me to the high school, and I would do spring football practice with the varsity.
Wow. So he was working on you playing, even though your uncle said no. Yeah. And okay, gotcha.
My uncle let me do that.
Oh, he let you do that.
He let me try to play ball. After he kind of said, okay, we'll see, you can try. Okay. So my middle school coach would take me during remediation time to the high school. Okay. And I would practice with the varsity. It was so easy to me. It came so easy. I'm talking about I'm catching one-hand passes on folks. I'm mossing juniors and seniors. Like, it's coming easy.
And you're in the 8th grade.
8th grade. Okay. So I'm 6'1", 6'2", 8th grade. Okay. Which is a good size for a wide receiver. Yeah. I'm a basketball player, so you know I'm jumping over folks, mossing them.
That's right. You're using your body and positioning and all that stuff.
Football came a lot easier than basketball. I was good, but I was a natural in football. Wow. So that's when I started getting serious about football. So I started my freshman year in football. The team wasn't that good. That year, I made All-State as a true freshman, which does not happen a lot at all.
That's right.
True freshman, not second team, third team, first team. True freshman.
In high school.
Okay. Ninth grader. That year, before that year, we went to team camp.
Okay.
Like a team passing camp. So my 8th grade year, going into my freshman year, we went to a passing camp at Vanderbilt University. And our team, again, the football program was trash. I'm talking maybe a 1, 2, 3 win season. So we went to team camp and won team camp because we was killing folks. Because, again, they had a basketball dude and myself, another basketball cat. And so the Vanderbilt coach goes up to my high school coach and was like, who is that? Like, who is that? Why have we heard about him? Where did he come from? He's from a different country? Because football recruiting offices,
they know everybody.
Exactly, especially if you are of age. My high school coach was like, no, he will be a freshman this year. And he was like, oh my gosh, we were about to offer him. So that was really like the first time I got
this might be something.
Like an offer. Like I got an offer from Vanderbilt
going into your freshman year.
Going to my freshman year in high school.
Wow.
And then after my freshman year, my high school coach was like, listen, you got a chance to be the greatest football player in this state. Like you have a chance to not only be one of the best players in the state, but one of the best players in the country. And this is how you need to look at it. You need to be, after your sophomore year, one of the best players in the city, junior year, best player in the state, and your senior year, be one of the best players in the country. Well, we went to a Tennessee football camp after my freshman year going to my sophomore year. Tennessee didn't know how old I was either. They offered
because you were 6'2", and
so they offered me
shaving when you were 5.
Yeah, they offered me. They didn't know that I was that young, so they offered me. So Tennessee Vanderbilt was like my first offer.
Okay.
And then everything else started coming in. So my sophomore year, I break the state record in something, whatever, and that's when I became a sophomore. Like I became All-American, and then every team in the country was on me. So sophomore, junior year, senior year, high school, like I was All-American. And going back to your question, when did I know that I had something special? Man, probably was when I was in 8th grade.
You went to that camp at Vanderbilt.
Well, that and I went to practice with the high school football team.
Wow!
And they couldn't hold me. I was dominating, and I played basketball and football for 3 years in high school. But I got hurt one of my last games as a junior, to where it kind of rolled into my senior year. And I didn't play my senior year in basketball because I was still recovering.
Did you play football as a senior?
I played football.
Okay.
No, I take that back. I got hurt my senior year in football.
The end of it, and you couldn't play basketball.
I couldn't play basketball.
Gotcha.
And so, that's kind of when I knew I had something special. I was a U.S. Army All-American. We got All-American games now.
That was like one of the big ones.
At the time, it was the only one.
Yeah,
at the time, it was the only one. It was like the third year they was doing this All-American game. So I was a U.S. Army All-American. Going to my senior year, I had scored 2 touchdowns in the game. Football was it. So,
that was it.
I was kind of like a man child. I'll show you. I have a graphic where USA Today went by every state and named the best 2 or 3 football players from each state. In Alabama, it's like me, Jamarcus Russell, who was the first overall pick in the 07 draft. Had a couple cats from Bama, like 2 or 3 dudes from Bama. But Ohio, it had LeBron James.
Wow.
LeBron was the best football player in the state of Ohio coming out too.
Wow.
And it had him, St. Vincent St. Mary, wide receiver.
Wow.
And it had me. It had a little write up that said best prospect in the South because I was polished as a wide receiver. I was so polished, and I was going to the NFL. I mean, I was going. It wasn't nothing that anybody could tell me was nothing that was going to stop me except for an injury.
Wow.
And that's what slowed me up. It was an injury.
And that derailed the NFL dream.
Yeah. So I came in and I played every game at Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
I left Tennessee 6 overall in history and catches.
Mm-hmm.
I had 2 knee surgeries at Tennessee.
Wow.
So my sophomore year, I got hurt. So really for my sophomore year, my junior year, my senior year, I was on one leg and still broke records here at Tennessee and still had a pretty good year, pretty good career at Tennessee. It probably could have been better if I was healthy.
That's right.
But
everything has a purpose for everything.
Right.
Right? Because, one of the things that, I was mentioning in the intro was, yes, we see this athleticism and all of that, but that was a setup for what was to come.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're doing now also would not have been possible without you having that journey of playing at UT. Mm-hmm. So right now, talk a little bit about what you're doing now, but then I also want to kind of go through the journey of how you got here. Yeah. So talk a little bit about what you're doing now, what you have going on with the Swain event and radio and podcasting and all of that. Talk a little bit about that, man.
Well, when I finished playing in 2007, I had signed a free agent deal with Chicago Bears. And I didn't get drafted because I was still hurt, so I didn't perform well at the combine and at pro day. So I went undrafted. I signed a free agent deal with the Bears. They had just lost to the Colts in the Super Bowl. It was Peyton Manning's first Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. So I joined the Bears right after they lost. Lovie Smith was the coach. I didn't feel right because I needed pain medication to be able to play. And I didn't have access to that same pain medication at Chicago. I knew I belonged, but I didn't want to have to be dependent on pills just to play. So one day I'm in my locker and I just decided that it was time.
So
I went to go talk to Lovie Smith. I hung up my cleats. I cried like a baby. That was my last time in a football locker room as a player. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I had developed some good relationships. I knew that I experienced adversity and could bounce back because, again, my father was murdered. I wasn't raised by my mom and dad. Like, I'm good. I can make it. And so I had jumped into, like, direct sales. My girlfriend at the time was pregnant with our oldest now, who's 10. But I needed something stable. So I decided to work at a fitness gym for a little bit. So I was there for a month. I didn't like it. I got my degree when I came back to school in sociology. So I decided to take a dibble-dabble in social work because I knew what I had experienced as a young man, and I felt like I can help others
who
was going through some troubled things as a youth. I felt like I can help them and mentor them. I didn't realize that social work was so taxing emotionally.
Yes.
And you don't make any money.
That's big.
And so I was a caseworker for a little bit. And it was really hard because I was bringing a lot of that emotional baggage home, trying to raise a young daughter, which was hard.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned the emotional baggage, but then you go back to when you were raised by a man in which the emotional part wasn't there. So do you think, I don't know, this is just kind of hypothetical, because of the way that you were raised, where it was like you were raised to be a man's man, right? Like tough, that whole emotional thing had not been unlocked yet. Then that, and I know social work's still hard regardless, but do you think that made it even more extreme from the standpoint of the emotional taxing of this whole social work thing, because growing up, like, that part of you had not been unlocked yet?
Yeah, man, it was tough because, my daughter was probably 2 or 3, and you know how it is with HIPAA, you can't mention names anyways, but like I would have cases where there was a young boy who was taken away from his mother because a mother and a boyfriend, to punish him, would lock him in a chicken coop. And he would like pick at his skin to the point where it'd be sores, and dad had custody of him, and dad stayed with his mom in a trailer. And so I had also kids where I had a kid that had to be basically separated from his other siblings because he was sexually molested with another parent, and when he was with the other parent in a mixed family, he would sexually molest his brothers and sisters while they were asleep, and he didn't know any better, so they had to keep him separated.
Wow.
I had a caseload of about 25 to 30 kids, and everyone had their own story. And so I was bringing this stuff home every day.
It's tough, man.
And that's not why I got out of it. I got out of it because while I was doing that, I was approached to be on a show, radio show. One of the young ladies who was a trainer
when you were doing the gym
at
thing?
Tennessee, Tennessee.
Okay, gotcha.
When I was a football player at Tennessee, she was a trainer. Her brother covered the football team.
Wow.
And he had his own radio show. So they knew me during my time at Tennessee as always being a straight shooter when I did interviews. I just kept it real. So this was when Derek Dooley was the coach. This was in 2011. And Derek Dooley had basically threw some of his players under the bus because they played bad. So they brought me on, and I said I didn't like it or whatever, which I didn't know at the time. You know, foreign players just didn't speak their mind.
That's right.
They always covered it up and always.
So that was kind of new.
That was new to them. They're like, oh man, here's someone keeping it real.
That's right.
I didn't think it was a big deal at all. Well, after that interview, I got like a direct message on Twitter. And in 2009, I got on Twitter. I thought it was stupid. My wife was like, you need to get on Twitter. I was like, I'm not getting on Twitter. That's stupid. But in 2010 or 2011, I got a direct message on Twitter from a radio GM who was like, hey, we want to talk to you about having your own show. I was like, this a joke? My own radio show? He was like, yeah. So I met with them. It was a show from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And the deal was, whatever I sold, I got 50% of it.
Okay, so it's when you say sales, ad for people who don't understand how radio works.
Yeah, ad revenue. So if I go out and sell some ads, I got 50% of it. The station got 50%. I got the other. And it was in addition to my...
your current job.
In my current job as a caseworker. So I remember...
And you got to also add, the opportunity is a little different because you were in Knoxville, Tennessee, where you had played football at the University of Tennessee. And for people who aren't huge football fans, you know, this is college football country, right? And so, and Knoxville's not a humongous market or a humongous city. So everything kind of revolves around college athletics at the University of Tennessee. So if you play football and you're a figure that people know, you got some juice in the area. So I'd imagine when that is propositioned to you, you step back and you think from a relationship perspective, I got some namesake here. I walk in and say, oh, I'm Jayson Swain. Folks know who I am. The opportunity is different from just some random dude that just knows sports that has to go and then build his credibility.
Yeah, and I really didn't have much success really selling. I was busy with my caseload.
Okay.
Because I was doing radio on the side.
Gotcha.
And my schedule allowed me to kind of have some freedom and do the radio, but I still had to have a certain amount of hours documented of time I spent with my clients.
Absolutely.
And so I didn't have time to go out and sell advertising. You know, they kind of did it on my behalf, but I decided to go full go with radio, and that was tough because at the time I was finishing up school. My wife, who was not my wife at the time, was my girlfriend. We had a kid, and money wasn't just flowing in.
That's right.
But I was following my passion, something I liked doing, because it became emotionally taxing, bringing home all that baggage. So radio was tough, a lot, and I was new. You know, I was learning how to set up segments. I was learning how to tell stories and really learning.
There's an art to it.
Yeah, it's art.
And see, people, and it's interesting. Everybody, it's kind of like comedy, right?
Yeah.
Like folks think the dude who's funny at the lunchroom counter or the dude who's funny at the table at lunch, or he could be a stand-up comedian. Like, no, player, it's a difference. Setting up jokes and understanding this and understanding punchlines and getting to this point and getting to that. Yeah. Radio or doing media or even podcasting is the same way. Yeah. There's a lot of cats that jump into podcasting that, I mean, granted, the barrier to entry is extremely low, and but there's a lot of people that jump into it and just think, oh, man, I can talk. I got something to say, and then there's a difference. Telling a story, doing it chronologically, pulling out points, highlighting certain things. You know, being able to be succinct and concise with your answers, and not. It's a lot to it, and people don't realize that it's an actual skill that you must develop.
Man, my first day I had about 4 or 5 pages of material of sports topics, things to talk about. I only had an hour show. I had blew through all the material in 15 minutes.
Wow.
And I didn't know what to do. I was like, And as I got more experience in radio, I understood how to draw out a segment, how to take a topic, look at both sides, take phone calls, all that stuff, man. Have a conversation, a debate, whatever. So now I do a 3-hour show, and sometimes it seems like it's not enough.
That's right.
Time
That's right.
to go over a topic, and that's just part of my growth and development in this business. But yeah, man, that's kind of how I jumped into radio, and I've had different things happen to me here and there that's forced me to grow and eventually be independent, have my own show, have my own studio.
And so in your own show, so speak a little bit about that. It's called The Swain Event. So talk a little bit about your show. What are your topics? What's going on with that, man?
So when I was doing radio, I didn't even have a name for my show.
Okay.
At the time, my boss's husband is a big Tennessee fan. She Auburn fan. And so I was like,
so he's a Tennessee fan. She's an Auburn fan.
Yeah, my boss.
Okay.
When I was a caseworker.
Okay.
And so I was like, all right, whoever can give me a good name for my show, you can co-host the show with me one day. It was funny because my boss's husband said you should call it The Swain Event. And I got all these different opinions, and I went with The Swain Event. It's a play on words. The main event,
That's
like
right.
boxing.
That's right.
You pay. Remember back in the day when Mike Tyson, Mike Tyson fight, now everybody put in their money, and you would have all these smaller fights before leading up to that fight. The welterweight, heavyweight champion, the welterweight championship, the lightweight championship. But then you wait for the heavyweight championship. In most cases, it only was like 37 seconds with Mike Tyson.
That's right.
But I was like, okay, it's a play on words. The main event, the main show. All right. So we went with the Swain Event, and I wanted to cover all sports. But like you mentioned, man, I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, where University of Tennessee athletics usually drives and
it drives the market.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so, man, we became more like a Tennessee sports show, and that's kind of what we are. We do talk national topics, the relevant ones, but I became kind of the Tennessee show, and there's a ton of shows here. There's a ton of people that do radio, and some do it for a hobby. Some take it more serious than others, and some have success, some don't. But man, I felt like I have stood out among the rest, and man, we've been recognized with several awards, and I've had people come and go, work for me, work with me. And man, we still here though, but yeah, we cover, we cover most of the sports, and we have fun with it too. It's not, your uptight,
statistics only,
stick in the booty type of approach. It's we have fun, we crack jokes. I'm a huge stand-up comedy guy, so I usually throw in a lot of.
Who's your favorite stand-up comic?
Right now it's probably Dave Chappelle.
Dave Chappelle.
I mean, I love Chappelle, but I mean, growing up, my mom used to always watch Comic View on BET.
Oh my gosh!
Back in the day,
that was my joke. Comic View, Def Comedy Jam.
All day.
What used to be funny to me was watching Comic View and then watching Def Comedy Jam, and the same comics would be on both of them.
Yeah.
And what used to frustrate me was I see them on Def Comedy Jam, and they tell the same joke on Comic View, but on Comic View they just took the cussing out.
Yeah,
that's it. It's like the same joke on Def Comedy Jam.
Yeah.
Then they be on Comic View dropping the same thing, but they just pull the cussing out and the N bombs and the whatever. Def Comedy Jam was wide open.
Yeah, so there's a lot of references to movies, music, and stand-up comedy on my show.
Okay,
we have a good time.
And it's a podcast too, right?
Yeah, we podcast everything. We do everything live.
Okay.
We podcast everything. We video every show. So, I've kind of evolved with the way people take in information because
it's real.
20 years ago, you listened to radio and that was it.
Well, actually, it's funny if you look at the kind of the evolution of communication. I mean, 50, 60 years ago, it was like AM radio, right? And then, stuff went to FM, but then you look at the emergence of television, but then it was only a few channels, but then the cable satellite stuff started coming in, and now we're in this whole thing where it's funny, you and I are kind of in the same age bracket. we still watch television. If you talk to a kid who's under 25, like we've had babysitters come, right? And, you're just like, well, here's the remote. Let me show you how to do it. They're like, I don't need the remote. What's your Wi-Fi code?
Yeah.
They don't watch. You ask a kid or ask someone under 25 or under 21, like, what's their favorite show on television? Most don't have one because they don't watch TV.
Yeah, they streaming.
They stream everything. It's all YouTube. It's all social media. And then to your point, the audio communication, it's some people still listen to radio. Some people listen to satellite. But this whole podcast thing, this whole on-demand listenership where I don't have to listen at this moment. Or even if you do watch television like with us, how many of us watch television when it comes on? Nobody.
Right.
That thing is recorded, it's DVR'd, unless it's like sports. We watch sports live.
Yeah.
But everything else, I don't think I've ever hardly watched anything unless it's like dinner time, like, Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy.
Yeah, I mean, you even look at how the sports shows, the sports channels, they've kind of changed how they give you programming. They don't do the whole highlight shows like Sports Center where it's nothing but highlights.
That's right.
Man, it's a lot of debate shows. The highlights are really, really, really short. And by the time you get home, you've already watched them on your phone.
That's right.
You've already seen the dunk. You've already seen the catch from Odell Beckham Jr. You already saw it on your phone.
So there's no need for the top 10
It's
highlights.
no need because you've already saw it. You don't want to see it again. You already saw it. And so, I've had to kind of adapt with the times where it was just AM, FM radio. Well, I got my own digital app. So if you want to listen to the show while you're walking your dog or while you're working out, I mean, you can't work out in your car. Listen to a radio. So
some will try, though.
Some will try. Just like some tried to do the Bird Box Challenge while they drive.
Yeah.
And got the wreck.
Yeah, come on.
People stupid. But, like, I've had to evolve. And it's been really cool, too, because it keeps me sharp, whatever. But, I have a mobile app. So that way people can listen live and they can go back and podcast, too. I've created a way on the app to where people can interact with me.
Oh, wow.
Remember I told that story about how I went through 15 minutes of material for an hour show. Well, I added an element to my app to where you can ask questions and comment.
Wow, so that adds more material.
Correct. So I'm seeing people's comments during the show.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm answering questions during the show. We also video stream the show. And that was another way I had to kind of become sharp because I had to learn all the electronic part of the learn all the technical part of doing this show. With me having my own studio, before I used to go to a studio, and all I would do is talk on the mic when the producer told me that I was hot or I was live. Now I have to learn all that stuff.
That's
too.
right.
Now I paid an engineer to come in and set everything up, but I need to know how it works and how it doesn't work, and if something happens, what do I do? So that's been really cool to do that. But we video stream the show, and I've had to learn how to make it look good, and make it look presentable, and sound great. And so that's been another challenge, but it's been really fun too.
That's cool, man. And it's just like, when I think about you, it's just like this constant evolving, constant growth, no matter what, right? Even when it came from going from Chicago to Huntsville, to even some of the challenges you faced in Huntsville, to then, dealing with injuries when you got to, the University of Tennessee, and then trying the pro football thing, but, the injuries kind of led you to realize that maybe this isn't my path, and trying social work, to then this opportunity kind of falling in your lap in regards to communication, which is funny, everything leads to something else. That stemmed from the sports guy saying, I remember you being a straight shooter when you were a player.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? Like everything,
it
all comes together. And so, and it's funny because a lot of us, I know me, this is an issue that I have personally. It's like sometimes I try to control every process. It's like I want to have my hands on it. I want to force it to go left, force it to go right. But, it goes back, you mentioned, God being extremely, the most important figure in your life. Same thing with me. And it's this concept that I roll with, and it's hands off the wheel, feet on the gas and the brake, as it pertains to my relationship with God. Hands off the wheel, feet on the gas and brake. Your steering wheel directs you. The gas and the brake is like you're going or you're stopping. So as it pertains to my relationship with God, if I take my hands off the wheel and keep my feet on the gas and the brake, when he says go, I go. When he says stop, I stop. But he's directing where I go. And it's hard because I want to grab the wheel. Now I'm not saying Mike D is not riding around hands free, right? Okay, not being real here, but as it pertains to like from the spiritual perspective. But then I think about life, and it seems like for you, it's been a lot of that as well. It's like your hands have been kind of off the wheel, feet on the gas and brake. Even like with football, right? You wanted to play basketball. You 6'2" in the 7th grade, everybody would assume like, yeah, he about to be that dude. He gonna be a power forward. You from Alabama? It's about to be Charles Barkley's second coming, whatever. Yeah. But then somebody kind of said, hey, try this football thing. I see something in you. Yeah. You know, and then you go out there and you're like a natural. It's like I never wanted to, but it just came to me. Yeah. Hands off the wheel, feet on the gas and brake.
And you know, it's crazy too. I wasn't always someone that didn't challenge God and that believed all the time. Remember, I'm 9 years old. My uncle raised me in the church. Like, I had no choice but to go to church. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday, we went to church. When my dad died, I used to question God. Like, if God was this and that, why would he let a 9-year-old boy, why would he allow this to happen to him, be without his father? Like, I used to question him a lot. And my uncle used to have conversations with me all the time. He's deacon in the church. And so really, 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 I mean, he knows all the scriptures, one of those dudes. And so, like, I used to, like, question him a lot. And I got a lesson about questioning him then. But that allowed me to listen to him, that intuition, that voice in your head, you know, when your heart's telling you to do one thing, but your mind's telling you to do another. And sometimes we listen to our mind instead of our heart. We make a wrong decision. Well, when I'm picking a school and I'm a sophomore in high school and every school in the country wants me and every school is telling you how much they love you and want you and everyone sounds the same, it was that voice from my heart, is my intuition that made me pick Tennessee.
And so, so again, just kind of really dive into this whole concept of, you challenged from a faith perspective, right? But you learned.
And that's what helped me select Tennessee. It's what helped me decide to let football go. It's what helped me understand that even having a daughter, that's what I needed. Like, I didn't question that. I knew, okay, I'm giving $3 because that's what I need, and they're healthy. I did have a scare with my second daughter who was premature, but it was my dad being murdered when I was 9 years old, and my uncle sitting me down, just letting me know that everything happens for a reason. And that adversity, that just prepared me for everything. Everything after that, to be honest. And so, I've been on the radio one day, and the station shut down the next day. And I was asked out trying to figure out what to do.
That's right.
I've been on the radio one day working with a station, and then they decide to shut the doors the next day. And I've had to find out what to do. But I never really, panicked because of my experiences and adversities as a youngster.
Everything happens for a reason, and everything is preparation for what's to come.
No doubt.
And if folks could see how you've evolved, especially from a radio perspective, and literally, you literally can produce dang near anything with what you got going on now.
Yeah, 20 steps from my bed, I can, man. I built a studio here in March of last year because one day I was doing a show and the station just sold out of the blue, and the owner of the station didn't even tell me. And so I had to scramble. Luckily, I had a gentleman here in town who does the same thing that I do. He runs his program independently. He buys airtime, and he built the studio himself because it happened to him the same way.
Wow. And
so he was so gracious enough to allow me to do my show in this studio for a month while I was building my studio here at my house. And so, man, it's been cool. I learned a lesson about just treat people the way you want to be treated. And you just never know, because those same relationships that you may or may not have valued early, you're going to come back to those. You may need those, 5, 10, 20, 35 years later. And it's been helpful for me, for sure.
And it's all about the people, brother. All about the people.
That's it.
And so now kind of just bringing this thing home, the topic or the title of this podcast is called Black Fathers Now.
Yeah.
And the whole concept is bringing the village to the brothers. The village comes in the form of insight, inspiration, and wisdom through various journeys. But the last part, now, is all about bringing stuff that the brothers can take, listen to, but apply to their life right now. As a father, how do you look at all your experiences? How have all your experiences impacted you specifically now as a father?
The one thing I'm afraid of is my kids growing up without me. When I was 9 years old, my dad was murdered, and it was tough. Like, God, I had to figure out a lot of things by myself, and even how I interact with people. Like when you play football, man, you're not afraid of any type of argument. You're not afraid of confrontation. You're big and bad. But now, because of like what happened with me when I was 9, I don't even engage in confrontation because it can go to a place that may cost you your life. Even when I'm in a car and someone cuts me off, man, I don't honk at them because I'm thinking big picture. I'm thinking road rage. I'm thinking things like that. Like I'm really, really careful about the situation I put myself into because it can affect my kids. One of the worst feelings ever is being an athlete is being unprepared. Like you play a game and you out of shape. The dude across from you beats you because you're out of shape. Or when you playing a game and the game plan is all jacked up because you didn't prepare and you lose. The one thing I fear is not preparing my kids for life. Not loving them, not giving them my all, not giving them my attention when they need it. Like that's one thing I fear. So if it ain't about my kids or if it ain't about my family or, growing spiritually and growing as a person, man, I ain't engaging in it. Man, I don't care. I don't care what new Drake song came out. I don't care about who said what on Basketball Wives. I don't care about none of that. I don't watch it because I'm not about to watch somebody else build their dream.
That's right.
That makes no sense. I'm building my own, and I'm pouring into my kids. I'm pouring into my family. I'm building my legacy because someone thought that taking my father's life at the age of 9 was going to stop the last name Swain from growing, and it didn't.
Wow.
It just gave me motivation to continue to put that name on the map. That's why I call the show the Swain Event. So when you talk about the Swain Event, you're saying Swain every single time. Now, I don't have any sons, so that legacy may get cut off a little bit.
No, the legacy, the name.
The name may get cut off, but the legacy will
live
continue. And so, man, I just begin with the end in mind. Every single day, man, I begin the day with the end in mind, big picture. And I take pride in being a father, just like I take pride in being a football player or being a show host and trying to have the #1 show. I'm trying to be the #1 father. The way you do that, man, is surround yourself with other great fathers and other people that value family and value, family values and stuff like that. So you gotta put yourself around other good people, man. They're doing things the right way. You can't soar with the eagles if you're hanging out with pigeons.
What you talking about?
Yeah, man. And so I try to surround myself with other folks that are doing things the right way, like yourself. Me and my wife was having a conversation the other day about we need to hang out with Mike Dorsey and his wife. We got to hang out with more married couples because that's how you grow.
We all get
better. Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. Yeah. My grandmother had a quote she used to always use. She said, "Association leads to assimilation."
Man.
And as a kid, you thought they just throwing like SAT words at you, trying to get you to, try to think about stuff. But association leads to assimilation. And it literally boils down to what you were talking about. You can't soar with eagles if you're kicking it with pigeons. Yeah. Right? You lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas.
That's right.
Right? Well, I'm a Q, so I mean, these kind of dogs, all right. But anyway, different conversation. But to your point, man, it's all about associating with greatness. If you want to be great, you got to be around greatness.
That's right.
Right? And, man, your story is great, man. I think you're great. I think you're doing some stuff now in the world that's going to leave a legacy that whether you have 3 girls and the name is no longer there, the legacy is going to live on.
That's right.
Right? And you're the concepts and principles that you're instilling in them based on your journey and based on what you've done will live on for generations to come. I think it wasn't in Black Panther when after his father passed, the guy was sitting there. He was like, "Father, why did you leave me? Why did you leave me?" And he mentioned to him, and I'm loosely quoting it, he said, "If I had not prepared you for my leaving, or if I not prepared you for my own death, then I failed you as a father. And so it's kind of like we don't know what tomorrow holds. We're not promised the next day, but if we do everything daily and live every moment on purpose, like you're mentioning, on the notion that I'm trying to be the best version of myself, that concept and that principle is going to live on through the seeds that you've planted, and those seeds are them 3 little girls.
Yeah, man. And they see how they see you, how you treat their mother.
Absolutely.
And guess how they're going to view their boyfriend.
Absolutely.
They're going to want a version of their father.
Absolutely.
And so if you ain't doing right, you a father, that's the type of man that they're going to attract when they're looking for a mate. And so that's something that's very, very important to me. If you have a young son, they're going to be like you. You know, if you ain't doing things right, they're going to look at you. And the worst thing ever is when you have an older kid who doesn't respect you because you messed up. And I've had some of those conversations with my mother because my mother didn't do everything right. You know,
none of us do.
And
right?
so I've looked at her a little differently than most kids look at their mom, and we've had some conversations. And our relationship is not the best. You know, it's up and down. And I'm glad she's in a really good spot. But that's helped me become a better parent because I want my kids to have something I didn't have, which is both parents in the household.
Absolutely.
My wife's mom and dad was divorced, and you know we talk about how it's affected her, and we talk about how things affect us, and we want to make sure that we give our kids something that we didn't have. Yeah,
absolutely,
sure.
Absolutely, brother. I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to share with us on Black Fathers Now. How can the brothers follow you, man? I mean, some ladies too. I mean, people, all demographics and stuff. Listen, but how can folks follow you? How can they check in on the Swain event? Check you out on social media? Anything that you got going on now that you want to kind of put out there?
Yeah, on Twitter, I'm at Swain Event. Instagram, I'm at Swain Event. Facebook, my show page is Swain Event. And we do the show from 7 to 10 every weekday morning here in Knoxville, 8:50 a.m., 100.9 FM. We podcast everything. We video stream everything. Man, we're trying to hit multiple platforms. And that's how we do it. And
so if they pretty much find Swain Event anywhere, any of the platforms, they're gonna get in touch with you.
Absolutely, you can download the free app. It's on Android and Apple devices, and man, we just rock out. So we have a good time, and again, we're doing this thing independently.
That's what's
no
up.
big money backing, no big station backing us. You know, I take my funds and I go pay for my own airtime. And the first time it really hit me that we were doing something right is when I got a notification that I was voted top talk show host, one of the top talk show hosts in Knoxville, top 3.
Oh, wow.
The only sports show voted in the top 3.
Wow.
So the first one was Halloran Hill, who's been doing this thing for a long time. And, does it right, does political talk, and really successful on the big station. The second is a morning show duo of Mark and Kim. And then number 3 is little old independent Jayson Swain, who had a moment at the crossroads at the prison at the Rock Corps at the age of 11 and decided to go one direction when he could have went the other direction. The guy who the 6th grade teacher told that he wasn't going to be anything, that he wasn't going to amount to anything, and we proved it wrong. And so you can do anything you want to if you got good people around you and you got a will to win. So that's when it really hit me, like, oh man, I'm doing something, man. People respect genuineness. They respect honesty, and that's kind of my approach doing radio, because that's how I was raised. I was raised that way.
Right.
Yeah, man.
I'm gonna tell you, and it's funny. Everything leads to something else, right? And like you can say, like your life, all these things, all these different connections, one thing has led to the other, and you didn't yet necessarily know what was coming, right?
No clue.
It's funny. You mentioned something here, and I'm gonna see if you made this connection. You mentioned that you just got voted number 3 in the market.
Yeah, City View Magazine.
City View Magazine in Knoxville.
The readers listen to that.
Hold on. But I want you to think about this though. You got voted number 3, but what number did you wear at UT?
Oh, number 1.
You got voted number 3, but what number did you wear at UT?
No, number 1.
So therefore, I think some things might be leading to something else, right?
Yeah.
Dig on that.
Yeah, the only sports show out of that 3. So yeah, that's the goal.
Sports. I don't care what the genre is.
Yeah.
You're right now number 3, but the number that you wore was what?
Yeah, 1. Yeah.
one thing leads to another, right?
Yeah.
Dig it, man.
That's right.
Well, fellas, definitely follow Swain Event on every social media platform. Anywhere that you catch podcasts, you can download it. You can listen to his app through the App Store on Apple or Android devices. And make sure to reach out to Jayson. And when you reach out to him, let him know you heard about him on Black Fathers Now. And we definitely want to support him. This brother is doing a lot of different stuff, man. You need to check in with him and ask him some questions on the tech stuff, too, man. He was geeking out on me with all this tech stuff, with all these cords and all of that. You know what I'm saying? He's more than an athlete, right? Dig it. But as always, as well, follow Black Fathers Now on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Visit blackfathersnow.com. Make sure to subscribe. Share this episode with your friends. Yo, also grab some apparel. blackfamilyapparel.com. Grab some awesome apparel that celebrates the nuances of the black family. And you know what? Until next time, y'all be blessed, well, and wise. And I'll holla at you. Peace. Yo, fellas, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And always visit blackfathersnow.com, as well as follow Black Fathers Now on virtually every social media platform you can think of. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. Just follow us and engage with us, man. Look forward to hearing from you. And I guess until next time, I'll holla at you. Peace.